You're listening to Overhead Story Channel. Enjoy.
It started with something small. Isn't that always how it goes? Not a fight, not a confession. Just a quiet moment on a quiet Sunday morning in a kitchen that had once been filled with laughter in a life I'd thought was fine or close enough to it. The air outside was soft and cool for San Diego, early spring kind of weather when it's warm enough to open the windows but not so hot you regret it. Emma was upstairs showering and I was puttering around the kitchen doing the usual, rinsing out the French press, clearing dishes from the night before, wiping fingerprints off the stainless steel fridge. Mundane. Routine. Comfortable. Her tablet buzzed on the counter. I wouldn't even have noticed it if it weren't for the sound. She hardly used the thing. Usually buried under mail or stacked with cookbooks, half-charged and forgotten. But there it was, lighting up on the granite countertop like it had something important to say. I didn't open anything. I just swiped down to clear the notifications, that's all I meant to do. But that's when I saw it. A message preview. Not a full one, just the kind that sits on your lock screen before the device auto-locks again. A name I didn't recognize, T, just the initial. And then below it, a photo. A wine glass on a nightstand. Dim lighting. Hotel carpet barely visible in the corner of the frame. The caption said, "Next time, we get the full bottle. Just you and me." It hit me in the chest like a thud. Like someone had tossed a brick at me but smiled while doing it. My first reaction wasn't anger. It was confusion. I just stared at it, waiting for it to make sense. Trying to fold it into something harmless. Something explainable. I knew Emma had a wide network, colleagues, old classmates, people she occasionally messaged about conferences or alumni events. She worked in marketing for a biotech firm and her job involved a lot of traveling, lots of charm, lots of professional warmth. Maybe this was someone she met during a trip. Maybe they had an inside joke about wine, or hotels, or something I didn't know about. But the tone? The way it was worded, I knew that tone. I knew that particular kind of flirt. It was the kind of message you send when you're pretending to joke, but you're not joking. The kind of thing you write when you've already crossed the line and are seeing how much further you can go. Still, I told myself not to jump. Not yet. I didn't open the tablet. I just left it on the counter, screen dark again, like it hadn't just upended my morning. She came downstairs maybe 10 minutes later. Hair still damp. Wrapped in that old navy blue robe with the frayed cuff she refused to get rid of. She was humming something, barefoot, already talking about how we needed more lemons. I didn't say anything at first. I just turned and handed her the tablet. Held it out like it was some kind of offering. Or evidence. "What's this?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. I didn't answer. Just looked at her. She took it, glanced at the screen, and then paused. Only for a second, but long enough. Long enough to register. Long enough that I saw something shift behind her eyes. "Oh," she said, blinking once. "That's just Travis. He's from my grad program. He sends me dumb stuff like this all the time. Inside jokes. Thesis nights, cheap wine, staying up late stressing over data. You know." I didn't know. I'd never heard her mention a Travis. And I'd heard plenty of grad school stories. She must have noticed the look on my face because her tone changed. Hardened. "Trevor, seriously?" she said, crossing her arms. "You're doing this? You're really going to act suspicious over some stupid message? I just saw it. That's all. And what? You think I'm cheating on you because someone sent me a photo of a glass of wine? Wow. I'm not accusing you," I said quietly. You are accusing me. You're implying things. Over a message you weren't supposed to see. It popped up on the lock screen. I wasn't digging. She scoffed, turning away to grab a mug from the cabinet. "Well, congratulations. You've officially entered the phase where you're monitoring my devices. That's not what this is." She filled her cup with coffee. Stirred it. Didn't look at me. "Do you even hear yourself?" she continued. "You're acting paranoid. And honestly, it's exhausting. I get one dumb message from someone I haven't talked to in forever and you're standing here like some detective. Maybe that says more about your insecurities than it does about me." It stung. The way she said it, calm, detached, like she'd rehearsed the line, like she'd said it before. Not to me, maybe, but to someone. I didn't know what to say. I felt like I was standing in the middle of our kitchen holding a smoke detector that was going off, and she was insisting there was no fire. Just a joke. Just an overreaction. "Why didn't you just tell me?" I asked. "Because there was nothing to tell," she snapped. "And because I knew you'd react exactly like this." Then she softened. Sighed. "Look, I'm sorry, okay? I shouldn't have snapped. I just I don't want to argue over nothing. Not on a Sunday. Can we just let this go? I nodded. Not because I believed her, but because I didn't want to push. Not yet. She leaned in and kissed my cheek, like she always did before yoga class. Said she'd be back in a couple hours. Then she grabbed her mat and keys, and just like that, she was gone. But I stayed, standing there in the kitchen, with the coffee gone cold and that message still burned into the back of my mind. Next time we get the full bottle. Just you and me. It echoed in my head long after the door closed behind her. I stared out the window, watching the branches sway gently in the morning light, pretending I wasn't waiting to hear the sound of her car turning back around. After that Sunday morning, everything seemed the same, at least on the surface. Same routine, same greetings, same forced laughter during dinner when she recapped her day like nothing had happened. But something under it all had shifted. Something small and slow, like a current pulling beneath still water. And once I noticed it, I couldn't stop noticing it. That message never left my mind. It lived in the spaces between conversations, in the pauses that used to be comfortable. I tried not to dwell on it, or at least I told myself I was trying. But the thing about suspicion is that it doesn't need a lot of space to grow. Give it one crack in the drywall, and suddenly you're watching the whole house for termites. I started seeing things differently, remembering things differently. Emma had been distant for months, maybe longer. It wasn't obvious at first. Just little stuff. Less eye contact. More time on her phone. Her laughter didn't sound the same anymore. It used to roll out of her like sunlight, and now it came clipped, mechanical, like she was checking off a box. I started rewinding the last year in my head like a film editor looking for a single frame gone wrong. There were the late nights at the office. First, I believed her. She worked for a startup that demanded everything from everyone, and I respected that. I respected her. But then the excuses started getting curated, specific but vague. Client dinner ran late turned into, we had to meet at that hotel downtown because their CEO was flying out. Or my battery died, and I didn't realize how late it got. Except she always had a charger in her purse. Once, she came home after 11 p.m. Hair perfectly styled, not a trace of sweat on her. Said she'd been on a Zoom call with a team in Europe. But she was wearing perfume, the kind she only used on date nights. There were other things too. Subtle. Her phone was always face down now. Always on silent. I'd ask her something and she'd take 2-3 seconds longer than usual to answer, like she had to run the response through a filter first. She was careful now. Too careful. We used to spend our weekends together without really planning anything. Long drives up the coast. Lazy afternoons on the couch with bad movies. Lately, she always had somewhere to be. Yoga retreats. Art pop-ups. Networking brunches. I'd suggest we go together, and she'd hesitate. Say it was just for women or not really my thing. She stopped asking about my day. And when I told her about it anyway, she just nodded, no follow-ups, no smiles. Like she was waiting for me to finish so she could go back to whatever she was pretending not to think about. She stopped touching me. That was the hardest part to admit, even to myself. And * Macy didn't disappear overnight. It just withered. A slow erosion. Her kisses got lighter. Her hands colder. She'd pull away first when we hugged. Sometimes flinch when I reached for her in bed. She stopped wearing the t-shirt of mine she used to love. Stopped reaching across the sheets at night. I once joked that we were becoming roommates. She didn't even laugh. Just said maybe that's what happens when people get comfortable, and rolled over. Even the house, the one we used to fill with music and cooking and half-finished projects, started to feel like a set. Like we were acting out a life we weren't living anymore. I tried to talk to her about it. More than once. I asked if something was wrong, if she was stressed, if work was getting too heavy. She always smiled, that tired smile she'd mastered, and said, I'm fine. Just tired. You worry too much. And maybe I did. But not without reason. The final straw, at least for me, came 2 weeks later. She told me she was going on a weekend yoga retreat in Big Sur. It wasn't unusual, she'd gone on a few over the years, and she always came back with stories about organic food and soul-cleansing silence. But this time felt different. She didn't tell me about it until the night before. She said her friend Marlene had found a last-minute spot and invited her. Marlene? I asked. I thought she moved to Oregon. She's back, Emma said quickly. Just for a while? You know how she is always bouncing around. She avoided eye contact as she packed her overnight bag. You want me to drop you off? I asked. No. I'll drive. It's better that way. I can come and go when I want. The next morning, she was up early, dressed before I even got out of bed. She kissed my forehead, said, I'll text you when I get there, and left with her yoga mat slung over one shoulder. Except I never got that text. Not that day. Not the next. She came back Sunday evening glowing. Literally glowing. Skin flushed, smile effortless, as if she'd been reborn. Good weekend? I asked. Amazing, she said, setting her duffel down. Exactly what I needed. Did you get my text? Oh, she said, waving her hand. Signal was terrible. You know how remote those places are. I nodded. She moved past me into the kitchen, humming to herself. That night, I laid in bed with her next to me, scrolling on her phone, laughing softly at something I couldn't see. I stared at the ceiling, counting every crack in the plaster, every breath she took. And I felt it. That slow ache. The knowledge that I was sharing a life with someone who was somewhere else entirely, someone I could reach but couldn't touch. The next day, I found the yoga brochure in the trash. It wasn't for Big Sur. It was for a retreat in Santa Barbara, not even the same coast. I didn't confront her. Not yet. But I folded it up and put it in my desk drawer. Next to the hotel wine glass photo I had printed from her tablet. Proof, maybe. But proof of what, I still didn't know. Only that the woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, was disappearing by the day. And she wasn't leaving a trail behind. It happened on a Tuesday. Nothing dramatic, nothing out of place, just a Tuesday. Overcast, muggy, with a faint smell of asphalt from the morning drizzle. I remember that clearly. I had wrapped up a site inspection early for a new project up in Oceanside. The contractor had a supply issue, so we cut the visit short and I decided to skip the office. I figured I'd go home, catch up on reports, maybe finally fix the crooked shelf in the laundry room Emma had been reminding me about for weeks. I turned onto our street at 2:17 p.m. and that detail stuck with me, too. My hands were still dusted with sawdust from marking up floorboards and the radio was playing a song I used to like but hadn't heard in years. I pulled into the driveway. Her car wasn't there. Which was fine, she'd said she had a client meeting across town, so I didn't expect her. But there was another car. Parked halfway into our drive like it belonged. A silver sedan. Clean, new, windows slightly tinted. Definitely not Marlene's or anyone else I recognized. I slowed as I pulled up behind it, my stomach tightening. I don't know what I thought I would find, maybe a contractor, a plumber, someone dropping something off, but deep down, I already knew. You don't need proof when your gut already knows. Proof is just a formality. I parked on the street and walked up the sidewalk slowly. No sounds from inside. No movement through the blinds. Everything looked still, staged, like the house was trying not to breathe too loud. I didn't go in the front door. I walked around the side gate instead, the one that leads to the backyard. The latch was unhooked, which was odd. Emma always made sure it was shut because of the neighbor's dog. I stepped inside the yard, careful, silent, like my body knew something my brain hadn't caught up to yet. That's when I saw them. Through the back window, partially veiled by the sheer white curtain Emma had picked out from that boutique she loved. The one she insisted we splurge on even though we were supposed to be budgeting that month. Two silhouettes. They were in the living room. I could only see their reflections in the glass at first, soft outlines, blurred by the curtain but unmistakably close. One of them leaned in. The other touched their knee. Laughter. Heads tilted. Legs angled toward each other. It wasn't just proximity. It was posture. Comfort. Familiarity. I shifted left, peering through a break in the curtain, and there they were, Emma and a man I had never seen before. He had dark hair, sharp features, wore a gray button-up rolled to the elbows like he was posing for a catalog. She was laughing, her hand on his chest, leaning in like this was their home. Like they belonged there. I pulled out my phone. My hands were trembling, but I pressed record anyway. I didn't know why. Maybe to prove to myself that I wasn't imagining it. Maybe to capture the exact second something broke beyond repair. I filmed for 15 seconds, just enough to see her adjust her robe, his fingers brushing her wrist. Just enough to confirm what the last 6 months had been whispering in my ear. Then I stepped back. The rage I thought I'd feel never came. No fury. No urge to storm in. What I felt was quieter. Like sinking into cold water, slow, numbing, absolute. I went back around the house and entered through the front door like nothing was wrong. I walked into the kitchen, sat down at the table, and waited. Half an hour passed. Maybe more. I stared at the same chipped corner of the counter the entire time. At some point, the front door opened and I heard footsteps, hers, light and careful, followed by the unmistakable shuffle of the door lock clicking back into place. "Trevor," she called out, voice almost too cheerful. "You're home early?" I didn't answer right away. I heard her setting something down, keys, maybe. Then her steps padded toward the kitchen. She appeared in the doorway, her hair tied up, robe loosely knotted at the waist, skin flushed like she'd just stepped out of the shower. Not a trace of guilt on her face. "Didn't expect you until later," she said, running a hand through her damp hair. "Was just finishing a video call. Had to jump in the shower afterward, crazy day." She smiled. A perfect, practiced smile. I looked up at her and returned the smile. Not because I believed her, but because I wanted to see how long she could lie without blinking. "Everything okay?" she asked, cocking her head. "Yeah," I said, nodding. "Just a long day." She didn't notice the phone still recording in my lap. Didn't see the flicker of the screen showing the paused footage. Or maybe she did and just didn't care. She leaned over and kissed the top of my head. And I let her. That night, I didn't say anything. We ordered Thai food. Watched a rerun of some show we used to like. She curled up next to me on the couch, head on my shoulder, and it felt like living inside a stranger's body. My arms moved, my lips formed words, but nothing inside me was mine anymore. Later, when she went to bed, I stayed up. I opened my laptop and backed up the video to a drive. Then I accessed our shared cloud account and started collecting. Her photo albums, her calendar entries, her location history, a few messages left visible on her synced desktop inbox. There weren't many, she was too careful for that. But there were enough scraps to start connecting dots. I saved everything to a USB and slipped it into the book on my shelf with the hollowed-out spine. She always joked about how weird that hiding spot was. I smiled at the irony. I looked at the footage again, this time without sound. Just watched the way her eyes lit up. How comfortable she looked. How unguarded. It was like watching someone else's life. A version of her I'd never met, living in my house, wearing my trust like a bathrobe. Eventually, I turned off the lights, climbed into bed, and laid next to her while she slept soundly. She murmured something in her sleep, some name I didn't recognize. I stared at the ceiling until dawn. By then, I already knew what I had to do. And more importantly, I knew how I was going to do it. There's a strange clarity that comes when something breaks cleanly. The morning after I watched Emma lie to my face, robe still damp, eyes still soft, lips brushing my forehead like we hadn't just crossed into the unspoken, I woke up before her. I lay there in the still dark bedroom, staring at the ceiling fan as it turned slowly overhead. I felt light. Not free, not yet, but weightless. Like something in me had given up trying to hold everything together, and now all that effort was being reallocated to quiet resolve. She stirred beside me just after 7 a.m., grumbling about the cold, pulling the blanket tighter around her. She didn't look guilty. She didn't look worried. She looked like someone who believed they had gotten away with something. I slipped out of bed and made her coffee, milk, 2 sugars, a splash of vanilla oat milk, just the way she liked it. She kissed me on the cheek, murmured thanks, and disappeared into the shower while I stood there at the sink, watching the sun inch over the windowsill like it didn't know any better. That day was the beginning. I had already saved the video, the synced messages, the calendar discrepancies. Now I needed to take control of the parts of my life she couldn't touch. Not out of revenge, but because I wasn't going to let her rewrite the narrative. I wasn't going to let her turn this into one of those stories where the guy loses everything because he waited too long to act. The first thing I did was visit a lawyer. Not to file for divorce yet. Just to understand what I was working with. The firm came recommended by a friend who'd gone through something similar 2 years earlier. Discreet, thorough, direct. My kind of people. I told the lawyer everything. Showed him the video. Explained the months of growing distance, the inconsistencies, the travel that didn't add up. I asked questions, not just about what she might try to take, but how I could step away without it turning into a circus. He gave me a list. Account separations, property protections, shared asset adjustments. Precautions. Moves I could make that wouldn't tip her off but would insulate me. I left the office feeling like I'd stepped into the control room of my own life again. That afternoon, I opened a new bank account under my name only. I didn't drain our joint funds, I wasn't trying to blindside her, but I started rerouting my direct deposits and moved a chunk of our savings, just enough to get a foothold. Then I contacted a real estate agent, someone we'd met at a dinner party once, someone who wouldn't feel too connected to Emma. I told him I wanted to explore selling the house. Just explore. He said the market was hot, asked no questions, and set up a consultation. The next day, I got a P.O. box. Small. Private. Somewhere to reroute future mail I didn't want crossing her hands. Then I bought a second phone. Not a burner, not for spying, just a backup. My clean line. One she didn't know existed. Each step was calculated, surgical. Quiet. At home, I didn't change a thing. I smiled the same. I helped cook dinner. I kissed her goodnight. I listened to her talk about a new hire at work who was totally lost and needed constant babysitting, while secretly wondering if that was the excuse she'd used that afternoon to bring someone else into our living room. I made her laugh. Asked about her coworkers by name. Offered to rub her shoulders when she complained about stress. I was the Trevor she remembered, the one she counted on to stay still while she drifted. I didn't ask questions. I didn't push. I let her feel safe in her story. Meanwhile, I was preparing the exit. On the third day, I booked a one-way flight. Not a dramatic destination. Not some faraway island. Prague. A city I'd visited once in college, briefly, for a conference. Quiet, timeless, unfamiliar enough to disappear into. The ticket sat in my inbox, confirmation number saved twice, once in my phone, once on paper in the hollow book where the USB drive waited. Over the next week, I made small changes to my routines. I backed up family photos, mine, not ours. I scanned important documents and stashed a hard copy in my car, tucked beneath the spare tire. I told my boss I needed time off in the coming month. No details, just time. He raised an eyebrow but nodded. Said I'd earned it. I boxed up a few of my things. Not everything, just what mattered. One favorite coat. 3 hardbound journals. A watch my grandfather left me. A folder of drawings from my niece. Everything else? Replaceable. I didn't sleep much that week, but not because of stress. I felt calm, detached, like I was living inside the eye of a storm I had already learned to navigate. Emma, meanwhile, seemed lighter than she'd been in months. She was more affectionate, playfully so. She cooked more, sent me midday texts with emojis and heart gifts like we were teenagers again. I think she believed the danger had passed, that whatever suspicion I'd had was gone, that I'd swallowed her lie like a good husband should. She didn't know I was already gone. On the 8th day, I made a copy of the house keys and left the original set on the marble kitchen counter, right next to the bowl where we kept spare change and chapstick. I wiped down the counters, took the trash out, closed the windows, checked the locks. I stood in the living room for a full minute, staring at the rug where we used to play board games on Friday nights. The floor still creaked in that one spot near the hallway. I almost smiled. Upstairs, Emma was asleep. Her hair spilled over the pillow like it always had. Her breathing was soft, even. She looked peaceful, like someone who hadn't burned her own house down. I didn't say goodbye. At 5:12 a.m., I opened the front door slowly and stepped outside. I didn't slam it, didn't lock it behind me, just pulled it shut and walked to the car, each step steady, deliberate. The sunrise was just starting to creep over the hills as I backed out of the driveway. I drove straight to the airport. No music, no calls, no thoughts except, this is it. This is your way out. You don't owe her an explanation. You don't owe her closure. You owe yourself peace. By the time she woke up, I would be 30,000 feet in the air. Unreachable. And finally untangled. The first thing I noticed when I landed in Prague was the stillness. Not the airport. Not the taxis or tourists clumsily dragging bags behind them. I mean the internal kind. The noise in my head. The white-hot static that had been buzzing behind my eyes for months. It stopped. Not completely, but enough that I could take a breath without feeling like it might collapse into a scream. I had booked a flat above a little bookstore in Malastrana, on a quiet cobblestone street that looked like it had been stolen from a fairy tale. The windows were crooked, the floors slanted, and the landlord was a woman named Annetta who spoke very little English but smiled every time she handed me my mail like we were old friends. It was perfect. There were no reminders of her here. No photos, no shared blankets, no scent of her shampoo on the pillow. Just wood floors, dusty shelves, and the slow tick of a second-hand clock that kept imperfect time. I unpacked what little I brought. A few shirts, a coat, a worn notebook, my grandfather's watch, and the USB. I left the laptop closed. I wasn't ready to look at it yet. I knew the files were there, the evidence, the documentation, the truth I couldn't unknow. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the need to keep proving it to myself. It was real. It happened. And I'd left. The silence here didn't feel lonely. Back home, silence was heavy, full of tension and avoidance and unsaid things hanging between us like fog. But here, silence meant space, peace, possibility. Emma didn't know where I was. I hadn't told anyone, not even my brother. I sent one email to my boss, thanking him for the time off, and another to the lawyer, confirming my intention to proceed with the house transfer remotely. Then I turned off the SIM card in my old phone and powered it down for good. The messages started almost immediately. The new phone, the one only I knew about, pinged with a cascade of unread emails forwarded from my work account. All from Emma. Some short, others endless. At first, she sounded confused. "Hey, where are you? I came home and the car was gone, and you didn't say anything about a trip?" Then came the questions. "Are you okay? Did something happen at work?" Followed by fear. "Trevor, this isn't funny. Please respond. I'm seriously worried. Did someone die? What's going on?" And then the panic. "You left? You just left? What is wrong with you? How could you do this to me without even a word?" Each one more frantic than the last. Some included photos of the kitchen counter with the keys still sitting there. One had a **T of the bed, still made. Another was just a video of our front door, her standing outside sobbing, pounding the bell with her fist like the house itself had betrayed her. I didn't respond to any of them. She called my mother, my cousin. She emailed my boss twice. She even reached out to my friend Kyle, the one I hadn't talked to in nearly a year, saying I might be experiencing a mental break and needed help. That's when the voicemails started. First, she pleaded, told me to come home, to just talk to her, to explain what this was about. Then she got angry. "You think this is how adults deal with their problems? You vanish in the middle of the night like some coward?" She didn't know I had the video. She didn't know what I'd seen. Her ignorance only made her desperation louder. I stopped opening the messages after day 5. I didn't delete them, not yet, but I archived the inbox and left it alone. If she wanted noise, she could scream into the void. I was done answering questions I never should have had to ask. In Prague, my days took on a rhythm. I'd wake early, brew dark, gritty coffee on a stovetop kettle that hissed like a train engine, and walk through the square before the tourists arrived. I found a cafe near the river that didn't care who I was or where I came from. The barista learned my name. Trevor sounded strange in her accent, but she said it with a kindness I hadn't heard in months. I filled my time with small things. Writing, reading books I never finished, watching street musicians play violins beneath bridges older than my home country. I found a secondhand coat shop and bought a scarf that didn't match anything. I didn't care. I wasn't trying to build a new life. Not yet. I was just learning how to exist outside of the old one. By the second week, the panic from back home had turned into bitterness. Emma's messages shifted from confusion to accusation. She said I was being cruel, that I was punishing her for something I didn't even understand. She said I was abandoning everything we had built, everything we had survived, as if surviving her betrayal was something we both endured equally. One voicemail stood out. It was just her whispering, barely audible. "Trevor, I know you know. I can feel it. Just, if you saw something, if you think something, it wasn't what you think. I swear. Please don't do this." But I didn't need to guess anymore. I had already seen it. The robe, the laughter, the touch, the lie. I didn't have to confront her. I didn't have to hear the apologies that would inevitably come dripping with self-preservation. I had left without giving her a script to perform against. That's what seemed to unravel her most. The silence. Not the screaming. Not the exposure. Just the fact that she couldn't shape the story. That I'd removed myself entirely from the stage. One afternoon, a neighbor back home, Mrs. Callahan, the sweet old widow 2 doors down, sent me a video over Facebook Messenger. Took me a second to even recognize the name, but I opened it. The video was of Emma, standing on our porch, crying, talking to the closed door like it might finally respond. Her hair was disheveled. She looked tired, Not glamorous, not curated. Not the way she'd been with him. Trevor, please. She was saying, voice cracking. Just talk to me. We can fix this. I don't even care what you saw. I'll explain everything. I'll go to therapy. I'll quit my job if I have to. I need you to come home. She slammed her fist against the door once, then leaned her forehead against the glass. Mrs. Callahan's caption read, "Not sure what's going on, honey, but this girl's been out here 3 nights in a row now. Thought you should know." I didn't reply to her either. By the end of the month, the messages slowed. Not completely, but they softened. The rage was gone. The bargaining faded. She tried reason next. "I'm not asking to undo everything. I just want a conversation. Just one." Then silence. That was the final gift I didn't expect. The return of my own peace. It didn't arrive with fireworks or closure or clarity. It arrived slowly, like dusk, like waking up one day and realizing that your first thought wasn't about the person who betrayed you. It was about the coffee, the light through the curtain, the sound of shoes on old wooden stairs. I was rebuilding whether I meant to or not. Emma didn't know where I was. And even if she found out, I doubted she'd recognize me anymore. Because I wasn't the man she left behind. I was the man who left her behind.